Yes, America.
It's gonna be in whisper format while we sip our coffee.
What is that, ASMR?
Yep.
Yes. Yes. I don't know. It's just been one of those long weeks, you know what I mean? My roommate asked me, "You ready for your podcast?" And I was like, "No, not at all."
I
I
think that's
never
kind of
am.
like I think that's kind of like the joy of it. Is like
Uh-huh.
it's like that. Oh, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Whatever we want.
Whatever we want. I mean, it goes sideways all the times, and that's what it's about.
Right.
Conversation isn't about an agenda, right? It's just kind of about teaching people how to communicate, I guess. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we have topics. So there's
Fuck yeah.
there's like things that we're like, okay, here's some things we might talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we get through the list. Sometimes we touch one thing.
I know.
And I
That's
don't
what I
even have the
love.
list, so I have no idea what other than like what you might send me in the week.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I just try and fill my head with as much as possible. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Um, I did want, I was thinking about, I was watching some of this stuff about Pennsylvania and the governor's race. I got to tell you, every time I watch the news, cable news, I get so scared and angry for our country. I just get so mad, like we're like this fight, like we're sinking in quicksand and I can't breathe. But then when I go and I like talk to people or I research candidates, I realize that's 75% really not true. You know what I mean? That
Mhm.
there's candidates out there that try and perpetuate the stereotype. I talked to you about that during the week, and we're not going to amplify that. But then you said something really smart, and it was, I don't really care about that until the primary. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care
Mhm.
about him until the general. It's a primary. And that made
Right.
me think, what are some of the other options out there, right? Like, we're told
Mhm.
that all Republicans are like super MAGA, you know? And so I
Mhm.
kind of wanted to use the Washington State Senate race to begin to help people learn how to pick a candidate ahead of these elections. Like
Mhm.
if it matters to you, you know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah.
Like,
So,
and I think that's, one of the things that, even in public discourse, we've gotten to the point where every Republican is MAGA, and we know that's clearly
mhm.
not true.
I thought it was.
And I knew it wasn't because I know plenty of Republicans who are not MAGA. They're like, I don't get it. It's like
Right.
I liked some of his policies. I didn't like the Twitter. I didn't like the
Hmm.
constant bickering, and overwhelmingly, the funny thing is that the left is easy, quick to hammer on, the problems with the mainstream media when it benefits them, and
Right.
in this case Fox News, and most of it, I wouldn't even call Newsmax or OAN mainstream media at this point. I think they
No,
just
but you wouldn't have called Breitbart a global sensation until it took over the presidency. So, and
and
that, sorry,
and and it flashed.
Breitbart was kind of what I wanted this to be, like a bunch of correspondents coming on and talking, but like as the opposition to the radical right logic over there, right? And
Hmm.
so that's what we've been working on. And we get some great people on, and you're right, we've covered some great topics to help people learn to think better. Like, I mean, we talked about thought experiments, which are like my habit, my daily life. We learned about
Hmm.
mental health and thinking about yourself first, you know, and
Hmm.
we've taken a lot of steps to work up to just look at a candidate, and if you agree with them, that's your candidate, but look at the opposition too, you know, and I
and and
hope that
and
helps.
and not just look at a candidate, like,
Mm,
like, for example, it's like you've got people who are just going to look at left candidates, you got people who are just going to look at
yeah.
right candidates, but even then it's like, try to find the substance in what they're saying.
Hmm.
Right now, MAGA is just, we're the antithesis of Biden's America, and there's no actual plan. It's just, fuck it, we'll wing it and see what sticks to the wall, and that's not a
Yeah.
plan. And that's largely what I I call the Democrats out for doing
Hmm.
when they're not in power, is it's just like, fuck it, we're not the Republicans, and they just throw out a bunch of talking points but no real plan,
Yeah.
and look at what's happened.
20 different 20 I'm on Twitter, 20 different talking points a day from one representative. It's like we're throwing everything at the wall to see what you care about. I really wish a representative would be like, this is my committee, this is what I do, and this is what I'm focusing on full force. I'm not going to talk about student loans if I'm in the judiciary committee. You know what I mean? There's
Right.
messaging per person. And the amazing thing is the right I figured out something about the right. The way
Hmm.
they message is they listen to the grassroots conversation and then they lift up the voice with the best message. And then that voice has a homegrown base already. And then it slowly gets popular. And people are like, I knew him when, so I know him. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? That's why we don't trust Rachel Maddow or Tucker Carlson. We don't know them. And they will never be on our plane of existence, right? They're always up there with a different message. They're not listening to us go, shut up. They're just
Hmm.
doing their thing. And what happens a lot is they get four people on to express an opinion, and those people are like, this is my prediction, and it's totally true. You should be scared. And suddenly people are scared at a possibility. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So we need to think about other possibilities. We need to think about more optimistic things. And looking at some of the candidates, I didn't agree with all the candidates, but I
Oh,
definitely
hell no.
disagreed with one. You
Hmm.
know? And we're still working on it. I asked a MAGA candidate three questions. Is Joe Biden president? Do you believe in replacement theory? And was 1/6 a peaceful protest? Now, this guy tweeted back and forth with me for about 40 tweets. And then when I said, you never answered my questions, he said, well, I can't answer every tweet.
And
And I,
that's
I find
and
that
that
interesting.
well, and that's because, much like anything else, it creates a record.
Yeah.
It's easy to have a phone conversation, and this is what you see.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I have to slam whatever former officials, whatever the media is. One of the things that we've seen the rise of all too often is where you've got, like, for example, right now Esper is coming out with a bunch of different stuff for his book, saying
Yeah.
Trump wanted to bomb the cartels in Mexico with missiles, and I'm going,
Mm-hmm.
like, a timeout for a second here. You mean to tell me that this worried you, but not so much that you would want to be like, you know what, shit, this is going to make great sales for my book? Not, we had a president who
Right.
thought that they could just launch missiles at our southern neighbor. Like, what the fuck?
But are you surprised? You wanted a guy without a out of the box thinking, and in a critical moment, he came out with an out of the box thought. Was it was it government approved? No, but a lot of
Thankfully.
people think, can we just blow up the cartels? At least there was somebody in the office saying, "Can we do this?" I don't have a problem with that. I would have had a problem if he had done it, but I also had a problem with him bombing Russian runways in Syria to prove a point about some red line that Obama failed to reach.
Right. And that was a huge issue too. And I said, number
Hmm.
one, that the Russians got warned, hey, we're going to launch cruise missiles at the or
Exactly.
and by default, because the Syrians were using that runway, the Syrians knew we were going to bomb it, and so there really wasn't anything that happened.
No, but he was a what is that? A TV candidate.
Hmm.
Every move was another episode to him. And I think he was playing the role of a president, the role he thought a president should be, right? But that wasn't
Right.
really Donald Trump. And I wish I could just tell of Donald Trump. I remember him on Donahue in the 80s. That dude was pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like he was just
Cocaine
laid
does that
back.
to people, though.
Yeah, laid back, chill, New York sort of pompous. And it was like, all right, I can take you. But now he's just this bitter, angry, retired Florida guy that's just yelling into the wind. And I wish I knew why he couldn't go back to just being the what the fuck, I'm a golfer, I don't care guy.
Well, that's because power corrupts, and
Yeah.
absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that's why I have such a problem with the system as it is, because
Yeah.
you have so many people who go into the system and come out of it absolutely corrupted, and in a lot
Hmm.
of ways. It's it's just one of those things about the nature of being the head of a country is if you
Yeah.
don't think your candidate has been corrupted in some way, shape, or form, you have to look at it two ways. Like, for example, like I was reading the news this morning, and the media is going, oh, Donald Trump Jr. in the center of this, illegal poaching illegal poaching thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, what the fuck? And so I start looking at the article, and it is the most clickbaity bullshit ever because it was like
Yeah.
this, Donald Trump Jr. decided to go hunting for a
Mm-hmm.
bear, hired a guide, went and shot a bear, and was none the wiser at the fact that this fucking guide had been illegally baiting bears.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like and we've seen this clear back to this whole Russian collusion campaign too.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, we constantly get caught up with this, and I say we, the royal we, but
Yeah.
like for example, you had this whole like he's a criminal mastermind, but he's a fucking dunce at the same time. I'm like,
Right.
that's not how this works. Either the guy's an idiot or the guy is a savant. It's not
Uh-huh.
this idiot savant.
He's a bull in a china shop. That's
And
what
so,
he was meant to be, a wrecking ball in a
mhm.
gymnasium. That's all.
And so you end up with this issue of, is it really the person or is it the people surrounding the person? Because
Yeah.
you know damn good and well that this dude knew that if Don Jr. shot a bear on one of his guided hunts,
Mm-hmm.
this dude was going to book bigger, more expensive clients
Yeah.
because of the name value. You have people that use the name value for their own gain. And you saw that with a bunch of the people surrounding fucking Trump, with Manafort and Flynn and
Yeah.
Giuliani, and all of these people use the name power to make themselves famous.
Well,
And that's
yeah.
and that's and you can try and call it collusion, but when you are someone who surrounds yourself with shady people, don't be surprised when shady people do shady shit. And
And
that's where
don't
that whole like I only choose the best, but then all the best seem to keep getting in trouble,
I
which is
well,
why he's more of an idiot than he is an actual like genius. The dude
yeah.
constantly has people surrounding him that are fucking up and getting in trouble, and the good ones that he had surrounded himself with fucking quit.
Well, they had no choice to quit because what Donald Trump was a pastry chef on a forklift. You know what I mean?
He was not forklift certified.
He was yeah, he was a ballerina on a road crew. Like he might be I think he's pretty savvy and pretty smart in sizing people up, right? But I don't think like Ron DeSantis and some of these other candidates like I don't know the governor on the Republican side in Pennsylvania. They do not know law. And so we're asking our waitress at Denny's to protect our rights. And it's not working. We need to have a base like qualifying criteria for some of these candidates because they're making laws, and if they don't know what laws are out there, they don't know what laws they're trampling on. And then of course that becomes a court battle, and then it becomes which law, the new law or the old law. And then
I wouldn't
that's
even say that they don't know the law. It's I would argue that it's more along the lines of most of these people live in a system where they do get to trample on the laws. Why? They got the money to hire the lawyers to bury it
yeah,
in legal bullshit for years
right,
until somebody just drops it and says, fuck it, this isn't worth it.
right. They want to
It's that
tax they're the Raptors testing the fences, right?
exactly.
Everywhere.
It's it's I would say that it's not that they know what they're challenging. It's that they want to do something and then they hire the person that's going to challenge it.
Right.
So I don't think it's really this case of legal minded magical intelligent maneuvering. I think it's I
Oh
want to do
no.
this. Hey lawyer, how the fuck do we make this happen? I'll let you figure this out.
I don't even think it's that. I think it's one guy that isn't a lawyer talking to a state house full of representatives that aren't lawyers saying, "What can we do? Let's just write it and pass it." I don't even think there's any legal thought about it,
Which
honestly.
is entirely possible too.
That's my theory. And that's why it's so important to learn about the candidates. Look, if you wanted to get pest control for your house and you had Terminex and Orkin come in and Orkin was like, this guy sucks, he's a pedophile. I mean, is that how you would pick your bug control? You should, and these people are in charge of your lives, not your pest control. So I think we need to put a little thought into them. You know what I mean?
Right. It's that magical, oh, if everybody's,
Yeah.
like, I mean, if every official in the government is a pedophile, then we have some real fucked up laws on the books that are allowing these people to be fucking
Yeah.
representatives or whatever have you. Or, somebody's lying through their fucking teeth, and that's the actual reality of this.
Well, there's a weird truth about America First movement. They're redefining terms and words. So patriotism means sedition, but to them it still means patriotism. But now it's defined by the
They
majority of society as sedition. They're changing the definitions of words so they know what they're talking about, but it sounds reasonable to us. Oh, he's a
it's
patriot. Yeah,
it's
no, he's
it's
playing.
code switching is all it is. It's just code
Right.
switching.
Code. We should do an episode on code switching to explain to people what that's like. I do
You
have a
know,
question about something you were talking about though.
yeah.
Donald Trump's son. Does that matter? Like, let me ask you something. Does Hunter Biden matter to you more than any other issue that a US senator could want to address?
All right. Here's if this were just a case of, did Hunter Biden look up some really creepy shit on his laptop? No. Does it matter to me? No. And it's not because I don't, if he looked up really creepy shit, I think that the justice system needs to do something about it. I think the issue that matters to me is our let me put this right.
Hmm.
Is his dad putting leverage on the system to not prosecute? I think that's the real question, because you know we've seen this play out in a bunch of different ways where the person at top puts leverage on someone to either prosecute or not prosecute.
Of course.
And I think that in itself is a legitimate complaint. But I also think that we have plenty of different ways that this could be decided on. And what I think that there needs to be is, there needs to be a Senate committee that, if there isn't that may not exist in entirety, but the top two Republicans and the top two Democrats get together and then they pick a special prosecutor for stuff like this, where, like a Mueller. And
Or
then
a John
that,
Durham who's currently investigating.
and I don't know, is I honestly haven't seen, was he a specially appointed prosecutor for
Yeah,
this?
no, well, he was specially appointed to get to behind the
But
voter
who was
fraud
he?
and Hunter Biden. Yes, he was appointed by Bill Barr,
He was appointed by Bill Barr.
and
Okay.
he's still there. Like Democrats are afraid to get rid of him because then everybody will scream cover up. So they're just letting him work, and he
Right.
hasn't come up with much. But you gotta at some point you gotta. Yeah, I don't.
And that's where it's
Here's
tough.
the other one. There's inspectors general all over the DOJ that investigate everything going on there. So Biden would have to
Still
put pressure
political.
on them.
And that's the thing, is no, he doesn't. He only has to put pressure on their boss.
Hmm. So
And
Merrick
and
Garland.
and his boss and their boss would just have to be like, no, our priority is this at this time.
Okay.
And so legitimately, it's like, this is one of those things where it's like, you know there should be something out there that just, personally, the whole, whether or not the election was rigged, or
Okay.
Hunter Biden, I think in this particular
We
case,
don't have to put those two together, by the way. We
right,
can
I
keep
wouldn't
Hunter
I wouldn't
separate.
want I wouldn't want a
Right,
special
right.
prosecutor for one and a special prosecutor for the other.
I gotcha.
Something where it's outside of Biden's touch. It's outside of, it's literally just, the top four senators in
Well,
the
yeah.
Senate that are
We've
just
talked
saying, hey, we're going to have this person investigate this thing solely.
we've talked about like a standing committee that just investigates the executive branch's oversight to
Mhm.
create a report at the end of every presidency. So we're
Maybe
for
that's
I'm
something.
for oversight, but now here's my
Absolutely.
question. Okay, Joe Biden Maybe he talked to Merrick Garland. I really think Joe Biden believes that he'll get caught in anything he does. So I don't really see him straying that far. But if he does, okay, and he talked to Merrick Garland and said, "But your priority should be this and not that." Okay, he did that. Now, in the rank of importance of things going on in America, where does that fall on the list? Is that like a 1, 2, 3 priority, or is that like a 50, 49, 48
Um,
priority? You know what I mean?
well, once again, that depends on what the focus of the issue is. If the focus of the issue is whether or not,
Hunter.
Hunter had it, but that's why I'm saying if the focus is just did Hunter do something that is
Mm,
illegal by any other stretch,
right.
then the answer is yeah, it's down towards every other person who looks up something bad on their fucking computer.
And do you think that there's proof that he did something bad? There's something that warrants a bloodhound? I didn't know. Like to me,
Well, here,
Hunter Biden doesn't matter to me when it comes to women's rights or disability rights or climate change or
well, the
like
thing is,
inflation or baby formula. I don't know where Hunter ranks in all of that.
well,
Like
the thing
MAGA
is
thinks that's a top 1, 2, 3 priority. I'm saying yes, it should be investigated, but I don't want to elect a senator solely to do that. You know what I mean?
well, here's the issue. Should a senator be elected solely to do that? No. But if there really truly is, and what it sounds like is
Hmm.
that there is a possibility that there might be child abuse that is on that laptop,
Then I want to know.
then I think absolutely it is important, but I'd still put it as not one of the like top priorities of a Senate or a House or anything like that. It's
Sure.
a matter for normal courses of justice.
I would
The
say it
issue,
falls
the
to the state that he lives in because if he
child
has
child
child
stuff is federal.
stuff, well, yeah, but it
That's
starts
federal.
local. The local takes it. It doesn't start with the Attorney General
Well,
of the United States. Nothing
the problem
does,
is that it
what I
didn't.
mean?
It didn't start with that though.
Okay.
That's the
It had
thing
to
is
start with a report of a crime
well, and that's the thing is that it started with this was Hunter Biden's laptop.
to the FBI, maybe, right? Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which you had several different issues that started out with this. Was
Okay.
number one was was this actually something that a foreign agency tried to plant in order to
Yeah.
sow discord in the election?
Okay.
When it became real, when it became real that it was actually his laptop, then the question is okay, with the materials that were found on it, then is it something that was actually put on his laptop or was it something that he actually did? And as somebody
Right.
who has actually practiced, has actually worked with
Mm-hmm.
forensic teams on
Sure,
things
sure.
like child pornography and technology. I actually have experience in this. This isn't something that moves fast. It never is. And it really like trying to figure out what is the likelihood that this person actually downloaded this or was it somebody who had access to this person's machine, because that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that you have to keep in mind. Like the laws themselves are kind of all over the place. Like
Sure.
we have to go after the person who has the knowledge of the material. And most of the time, and I say this sweepingly, it's the person who owns the machine. However, let's be real honest. How many people have access to somebody else's machine? It
Mm-hmm.
depends on the scenario, the environment that they live in.
Of course.
Is it likely that an aide of Hunter Biden's had access to this laptop? Probably.
Okay.
Because
I
let's be
don't.
real honest, if he's like, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z for me, and he's handing off technology because it's got his passwords and all that other stuff
Sure,
on it, it's
sure.
entirely possible. But there's also the reality that this was just Hunter Biden doing this shit.
Okay.
So like I said, the issue, you have to look at this is a tough one because I understand why the other side cares about this so much.
I don't think
If
it's
it
a
is,
tough one.
and I do, the reason why is that you don't have any proof that there hasn't been some type of pressure to keep this from being prosecuted. You
But
really
there's no
don't.
proof that it is.
And that's the thing. You're dealing with the federal government, though. It's not like it's like everything's out in the open, because if it
Yeah,
was out in the open, great, we would know the answer to this.
sure,
But we
sure.
also know that the feds selectively prosecute whatever they want, and especially my party
Yes.
when they're in office. And that's the issue.
I don't know
And
if,
I would say
well,
overarching the
okay.
issue is that the Republicans are going, this is the kind of shit we would do.
How
And
would how would
we have no proof that the Democrats aren't doing that either.
how would the DOJ cycle their cases through a political filter? Like they come in through tip lines and reports. Like I don't see Merrick Garland being the funnel point for all of that. I don't know, and I know that like they didn't eliminate every prosecutor in the DOJ when
No.
Trump left. So I know there has to be a mix of
But here's what you do. You don't strictly come out and say this isn't a priority. What you do is you reassign
mm,
assets to other things. So put
I got you.
you give that person less resources in order to do their job. It's a consistent thing that you do with any administration. The Republicans do it in order
Okay.
for their priorities, the Democrats do it for theirs.
Right,
It's
priorities. I
and
get
that's the thing,
well
is it's
that's
not like this overt, I want you to not focus on this. A lot of the times it's simply, here's what our focus is, take whatever resources you need in order to get this done.
yeah.
There are conversations that are always off the record, and that's the
Yeah,
biggest
yeah, yeah.
problem. It's
Is
like
it
we've absolutely, because damn good and well, we've had this issue with the Republicans where they have conversations off the record, and we're dealing with this with the 1-6 investigation. There's a lot of off the record fucking
Yeah,
conversations.
and Republicans had their priorities. Democrats have their priorities.
Exactly.
I'm not knocking that. I hope the prosecutors are even-minded, like the
Right.
investigators, the agents. I hope they're technocratic or nonpartisan. I don't really care if Merrick Garland decides to go after voter, suppression and
Hmm.
that doesn't matter to me. Everything is there. What I have an issue with is, okay, you want a committee to investigate Hunter Biden. I say you take that committee and you say we are investigating any sexual child misconduct within the families of any political person.
You can't do that. That's the
Well,
problem.
I don't understand focusing on Hunter Biden just because he's Hunter Biden.
So the reason why you pick special prosecutors is that they are very narrow in focus.
Oh, I thought we were talking about a committee, like two
Well, the
Republicans, two
no,
Democrats.
no, 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 no. That committee literally just picks a special prosecutor. The thing about special
Ah,
prosecutors is that they are very narrow in focus. They're
yeah,
supposed
okay,
to be
yeah, I get
very,
that.
very, very narrow in
I
focus.
get that. That's why
That's why.
Mueller didn't look into Trump's finances. That wasn't his,
Exactly.
yeah. And
No, it's
I'm okay with
extremely
that.
narrow, and that's what you want. And
Mm.
and the thing is that through the normal course of investigation, if you come up with something, that gets handed off to, whatever standard law enforcement
See,
that comes
I,
up.
s- I see, I see a sex crimes unit, and I see Hunter Biden as one of 50 files. You know what I
And
mean?
that's
Like
and that could
I don't
absolutely be the
see
case.
Merrick Garland holding it saying, I don't know where to give that. I think it just goes into the cycle of shit. And I think people are looking at it. And then
Absolutely.
an answer will come out, right? But I think they're looking at everything for their own sake too. I think they're looking at themselves going, was that a crime that Eric Swalwell just did? You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
so I think everyone's being looked at all the time. I don't think Hunter rank or the election fraud. I think that's past stuff. The truth is if Donald Trump won, he would be sitting in the Oval Office. So if he
Mhm.
won, he's a loser because he isn't in it. You know what I
Well,
mean?
but here's what I would also say, that every crime is past stuff, and that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
We don't have a
Yeah.
future crimes unit.
Right.
This isn't Minority Report.
Well,
Yo.
it's been investigated. I mean, you know what I mean? And I think Hunter will be investigated too. I think that's just the way the
Right.
world works. So you're let's see. Wait, did you want to finish up on that?
Nah, that's good.
All right. Your senator is Patty Murray, right? And
Yes.
she is in the realm of progressive. She is more of I would say moderate
Yes.
progressive. And she's been there 30 years. So she is the candidate to beat, right? And she's on
Hmm.
some committees. She is what I found out was she is the most senior female Democrat in the Senate. And
Hmm.
so that alone is something to consider.
Hmm.
Um, let's see. Patty is pro-choice and
Hmm.
progressive. Okay, let's see. She's for paid family leave and equal
Hmm.
pay. We did reach out to her to ask her for some of her top priorities. She did not respond, but she is here it is. She is the chair of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. And I don't
Hmm.
know, you have to be real careful when you're taking that kind of knowledge out of a system, but we always support younger candidates, right? And so that's a tough one for me. Do you know anything about Patty Murray? Does she matter to you at all?
Um, I mean, the thing about her is that, like in our, like in a state like Washington, where it is, Seattle pretty much dictates who's gonna get what.
Okay.
It's whether or not I support her is entirely, doesn't matter.
It's
It's like
moot.
unless she did something like so heinous and so egregious, like for example, unless she was, flat out comes out and says, that she's in favor of, like, the transgender bans. Like most of what
Right.
she's going to do is, what I would consider normal course of Senate business.
Is there
She's gonna say all the buzzwords. I mean, she's been at this for 30 years. She's pro choice. She's
yeah.
pro union. She's pro, all of these different things that most people tend to just be like, yeah, that's what I want and that's how I feel. And or even beyond that, the fact that the color is blue, the letter is D, most people aren't even going to look beyond that.
There's younger people are looking for two unique things, but I have a question. Is there resentment in Washington state about that divide? Like, does the rest of the state kind of lean more right because Seattle is like, we're taking control of everything and what we say goes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. In
Okay.
fact, like, realistically, it's like Thurston, Pierce, King, and Snohomish are like very, very blue, but that's also where like 80% of the population lives,
Right, right.
is in those four counties. And then everywhere else is like rural, stark red. I think
Mm-hmm.
Spokane is maybe one place where you might have like a small pocket of blue, but
But is
even
it
then, Spokane is mostly red.
But some of it's farm values, conservative values, and
Absolutely.
some of it's fuck you libs, right?
Yes.
Like,
Absolutely.
I know Adam is more of a fuck you libs. You can't have everything kind of guy, and I respect that. That's what I respect about him. All right.
I'm just more like fuck the system, period.
Yeah. There's two things that younger voters are looking for, and it's term limits, and it
Hmm.
is not taking PAC money or corporate donations. They
Yes.
want these two things. And I mentioned that to Pramaya Jayapal. Like, we need representatives that aren't going to be taking money from people they're in charge of taxing. And that makes sense to me, right? Doesn't
Yeah.
that make sense? Like, if you're
Yes.
going to be taxing them, you shouldn't be taking money, because
Yeah.
if you're cutting their taxes so they can give you money, you're taking money out of the treasury, right?
Here's the thing. If you're a business and you're donating to a candidate, are you donating just because you love the message?
Right.
Or are you donating because you expect something in return for that
Yeah,
donation?
ick.
You expect some representation for your own special interests.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Now,
Let's
the idea
investigate
is,
that and then Hunter Biden.
well,
Like,
and the reality is that, PACs were set up as a way for corporations to dump money in
yeah.
to generalized candidates. And that way they could have plausible deniability in this whole issue of, am I being am I only donating so that way I can get political favor garnered?
Hmm.
Yes, you are. It's just more steps to make it look like you're not. That's the reality. And
Exactly.
that's one of the biggest issues and frustrations is that, you look at the
Yes.
amount of money that some of these corporations spend on political candidates. It's like they're the same people who sit down and tell you, oh no, we can't afford benefits for our employees. Meanwhile, they're
Yes.
making 10, 20, $30 million donations to these freaking political campaigns. And it's like, no, you can. You don't want to. That's the difference.
Right. And then there's the UDC who spent $2 million in one House district in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Summer, and they're what is that? It goes back to Israeli money. And we give Israel money. Like, just stay out of our politics, you know? And they're going after Democrats saying they're not progressive enough. It's so gross and weird. And people are getting their information from these 30-second attack ads. And I hate that.
hmm
Patty
and
Murray might
so
be decent. She might have her flaws. And we asked people to give us the good and the bad. We asked Patty Murray to respond to everything. And she has yet to, but she's busy. I think she needs to staff up because there's an election coming and people have questions. You know?
well, and when you look at what that political favor looks like in those
Mm-hmm.
donations, now
Yeah.
you're starting to see what that looks like when you don't play by the rules that parties establish for you. And DeSantis, here's the thing is, do I agree with, why DeSantis, is trying to remove Disney's tax shield? No.
Mm.
Do I think the tax shield should have been removed anyways? Yes.
Well, Democrats were talking about it 3 months before he suggested it.
Yep.
They wanted to review it, and so yeah, I think there's a lot of rhetoric
But
around DeSantis
absolutely.
purposely.
Well, and oh, absolutely. Because, it wasn't that. It's like, are you doing something in a way that is really kind of yikes and cringy,
Right.
because like, you know, the the reason why, Disney has donated to, Republicans in Florida so much is because they garnered special favor through this special tax
Yeah.
district. But
Right.
now that that special tax district has been, is in the process of being removed,
Mm-hmm.
then comes the question of, does Disney continue to donate to all these different political, things? It's
Yes.
really hard to sit down, like, especially as we're moving into Pride Month, like, it is really hard
Yeah.
for anybody to take you seriously when you put all the rainbows up and say we're pro LGBTQ, but then
Mm-hmm.
constantly donate to Republican PACs.
Right.
Nobody believes you. You're a shithead.
Well, they need to donate right now because DeSantis says we're going to negotiate for the next year. And that's how he's going to get his presidential fund filled from Disney saying, we'll donate to you,
And
but
that's
fix this tax thing, fix this
and
tax thing.
and that's where people need to pay attention, because
Yeah.
if Disney is willing to throw money at DeSantis in order to
Yep.
keep their tax shield in place, then you know damn good and well Disney doesn't give a shit about LGBTQ rights.
That's right.
But if they say, you know what, fuck you, we're actually going to stick to a value that we've,
Mm-hmm.
come out and said out loud, and we're
Yep.
not going to, say maybe not donate to, any political campaigns at all,
That's
or
my dream. That's
purposefully
my
or
dream.
purposefully donate to the left,
Yeah.
that's gonna speak louder than if that's going to speak very loud. I mean, in maybe a light more favorable to Disney, but
Why
at the
would
same
Disney
time,
why would Disney donate to either one when both said that they wanted to do exactly what happened?
and
Yeah.
I think that's what corporations need to realize is
Yeah.
that the favors that they have garnered only
Uh-huh.
exist as long as they toe the line that is set for them.
Right. And we're also paying these people hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to do the job. We're also giving them free insurance. We're also giving them a place to live. Candidates are on what I call the elite welfare system. Like, there's no difference between DeSantis living in his public housing or somebody else. The difference is who gets funded. There's never going to be a problem in the executive public housing, but the rest of the
Mhm.
public housing is going to
Yep.
get worse. And that's the
So
problem.
Disney's going to be one to keep your eyes on and
Yeah.
see what they do, because
Mm-hmm.
they're going to say a lot of pretty nice words, really catchy things that, make everybody feel warm and fuzzy. But the moment
Uh-huh.
that they start, spending money on Republicans, it's,
Yeah.
it's a fucking front.
Well,
That's all it is. It's like you can't sit down and say you have these values, but then donate to people who actively are banning those things. That
maybe
doesn't make any fucking sense.
like filming a movie in the former Uyghur lands while Uyghurs are being oppressed, punished, and brainwashed and murdered. Like, yeah, we know where you are, Disney. You know what I mean? I know where Disney is. And I don't know. I don't.
It's
Some
like you.
people just say, there's this theory, oh, I just want to do it. Or I'm just not going to. You know, I might like Northern toilet paper better, but the Koch brothers make that, and that funds Republican agendas. So I don't use Northern. I use the Bear because the Bear is donates more to equal. They both. Georgia Pacific donates equally to Republican and Democrat, and I respect that. If you're gonna donate, you know what I mean?
In which case, for me, like I get it. I get why they want to donate to political
Mm,
causes, especially in this environment. But to me, it's the way that I see it is that none of these people really garner the favors that you want. Number one, and
right,
number two, you're always that favor only exists as long as you donate. The moment that you stop donating, or the
right.
moment that you start saying something that doesn't toe the line,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to take that away. So why spend your fucking money on that? You can literally
Right.
spend your money, you could literally take that money, donate it to charity, and use it as a tax write-off. Personally, I think
Yeah.
one of the things that uh, both Republicans and Democrats need to talk about is
Buy new shoes
lifting,
for your employees.
well, lifting the amount of charity that they're able to donate to,
I
because
like that too.
because realistically, like most, I think it's like $10 million right now is what you're allowed to, or up to 10%
Mm,
of um your income. So
okay.
to me, it's like that needs to change.
Okay.
You can do more with that.
So I did dig up one sort of knock on Patty Murray. Somebody on Twitter offered it. And I'm going to be honest, this person had like 150 followers, and I didn't know whether to believe them or not. And so I looked it up. It's an ABC law in California. And I thought that was going to be like a
Hmm.
vaccine thing. And I was like, oh, this is a vaxxer thing. But then I independently went and looked it up and found a government page, and then I read it and I was like, I'm so confused.
The one that you sent me yesterday.
Yeah, and somebody said Patty Murray wants to make that a federal thing. I have no proof of that. I couldn't
Mm,
find anything in where Patty said that, but just in case she does, what is an ABC law? Could that really hurt people?
okay, so I got a chance to read this yesterday.
Thank you. It was
Uh,
short. It was short,
it
right?
was short. It was short.
Okay.
But these are what we call the Uber and Lyft laws.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Instacarts and stuff, right?
so the idea is that what you have is you have this weird kind of gig economy right now. So
Mm-hmm.
the Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, things like that. The idea is that the corporation creates a platform uh, where one person can order food and all this other fun stuff, and then that platform then puts that up for grabs and says, hey, there's an order, go pick this up, or hey, there's somebody needing a ride, go pick them up. And then these drivers either A, get assigned these, or B, can pick their fares. It's kind of been a bit up in the air how they do that. They kind of change back and forth a little bit, but the idea is that Uber is literally just a tech platform that the people that are doing this are independent contractors, that are doing the actual picking up and dropping off. They only get paid for job completion. They don't get paid any other way. The problem is that you have a bunch of different rules that you have to abide by, and
Mm-hmm.
because of the way that it's paid out, you don't you're getting paid by task completion. You're not getting paid uh as a full-time employee. You're not getting paid benefits. You're not getting paid
Ah,
all these other things. you know and it's kind of this weird realm between you're a tech company, but you're also a company that literally, your business only works because you have quote unquote independent contractors.
right.
So it's these laws are really interesting and really tough in a number of ways.
Mm,
So here's the thing. What do you know about the realm of independent contractors?
nothing. Well, I
Okay.
know it was created so you didn't have to pay for health insurance.
No, not even
No?
that.
Okay.
No. So independent contractors, this goes well beyond Uber and Lyft and things like that. Independent contractors are people that, they don't want to work for a corporation,
Mhm.
but they fulfill a specific role. Sometimes it's consulting, sometimes it's technical expertise.
Sure.
And they get paid based on the job that they're doing. So, for example, here's where independent contractors, I would say, vary are very different from what Uber does. So if I go out to be an independent contractor, which I have done several times, um, what I do is I go, somebody says, "Hey, I need somebody who's a business consultant." And I say, "Yo, look, I can do that. I happen to have several degrees. I happen
Mm-hmm.
to know a law. I happen to know a lot of different things about setting up, about running a business.
And the other
Things
guy's
where
a
I can
pedophile, so pick me, right?
no, not even anything political like that. So what happens
I
is,
love how pedophilia is political.
oh God. So what happens is, I say, hey, look, I check all of those boxes.
Hmm.
Here is my rate for doing the job. You know, this is what you get when I come in and consult for you. This is what happens after I get done consulting for you. And I set the rate and I'm like, this is my worth. You can
Contract
pay
work.
me for what I do or don't.
Right.
The thing about what Uber does is, the people who work for Uber, the way that they have done this is people can absolutely set their worth, but you get punished in multiple ways. Number one, if you don't take a specific number of jobs, the jobs that you get that have lower delivery fees or lower tips will get assigned to you. So you get punished for not just
Ah,
taking everything. So you can't really set your own rate, your own value.
right.
And number two is that you're hinging that idea on what other people are willing to pay, not this is my rate. And
Right.
so that's where what Uber and Lyft do are drastically different from what an independent contractor really does.
I get
And the
it.
court battle that has played out is that, people aren't setting their rate, the corporations are. And if you don't take everything that gets thrown out to you, you get punished and get paid lower.
So
And
if
guess
you're
what that is? That looks more like employment. If, this is what we're going to pay you, not this is my rate, you can either hire me or don't.
so if a corporation sets the rules of the job, you're an employee of the corporation because they're restricting
Not
your
necessarily.
independence? No, I
No,
don't
no.
get it.
So with any independent contractor, there are rules. So it's like, here are all the
Yeah,
things that I do.
right.
This is what my rate is. The corporation can then say, okay, cool, we're willing to pay that. Here
Ah,
are the rules for this relationship.
okay.
And this is something that I focus on. I do a lot. I work on the legal side of this now, where it's like, okay, we're going to hire you, but here are the rules you have to abide by, aka your master service agreement.
Right, right, right.
It's like, you have to do X, Y, and Z with your technology. You
And
have to
our
have X,
ethics
Y, and
guidelines,
Z
right?
insurance. You have to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Right.
You have to have certain things in place. It's
But
like
you have
we're
terms, they have terms.
exactly, and that's what the negotiation is that when there's an independent contractor being hired, either, if I was the independent contractor or I'm the person working on the legal agreement to
Hmm.
hire an independent contractor, what happens is that we have to come to agreement on the terms, and sometimes that means we have to change a couple of things, sometimes that means they have to change a couple of things.
Right, right.
That's part of the negotiation. There is no negotiation with Uber and Lyft. It's these are the terms or don't drive for us, period, end of
Yeah,
story.
right.
So the way that this has worked is that Uber and Lyft are trying to say we're not employers, these guys are independent contractors, but as independent contractors, they don't get to set any of the terms. They don't get to say what their value is.
That's what I was
They don't
trying
get
to
to
get
say
at.
what their reimbursement is. They don't get to say any of this stuff.
Right. That's what I was getting at before.
And the idea behind it is that, you know, these were people who had a little bit of extra time on their hand and they just wanted to make a little bit of extra cash because they had a
Right.
vehicle and they were just looking at something to, but there's people out there that legitimately do this as their full-time job.
Mm-hmm. They
And
hustle.
so,
They know the
and
spots. They know where to go.
exactly,
They know the times. Yeah.
exactly. And so now you run into this issue of this was built to be true gig work. It's like, hey, nobody's asking you to do this. We're not paying you anything special to do this. This
Right.
is legitimately just, if you want to make some extra cash and you got the time and the vehicle to do it, great.
Yeah.
Here's your possibility.
So
But then there are people,
there's people that'll turn on their app for like an hour or two
couple
right?
hours, maybe
And
on a
then turn it
Saturday,
off,
and
right?
make some extra money on it
Yeah.
there. But here's the thing is that if you don't have a whole lot of ratings, if you don't have a whole lot of
Uh-huh.
positive ratings,
You're not going to get picked.
you don't really get a whole lot of jobs unless like
Right.
the demand is super high. And then you end up with the issue of some markets are super saturated.
Yeah.
So all of these people are competing to do the same job, unlike a independent contractor where when I get signed on, I'm not competing with anybody else to do my job. I'm doing my
Right.
job.
Right.
And so this model has varied extremely far from what independent contractors actually look like,
Okay.
more towards actual employment, but somehow competitive employment. It's a
All
really
right.
fucked up scenario, to be perfectly
Yeah.
honest.
And that's what
Like,
I was getting at. There's a line in there that says, unless otherwise specified by the corporation, these people will be considered employees. And I was like, is that bad? That sounds good.
well, and that's where I would say that this gets really tough.
Does that mean more taxes or less taxes? Like, this is a whole tax designation thing, right?
So, so here's where this gets tricky.
Yeah, it gets tricky
As
really
as an
fast.
independent contractor, because this would apply to all independent contractors.
Mm-hmm.
I The whole point of, like for somebody in my skill set is that I am making X amount of money, probably well above what the market rate is as an employee of an organization.
Okay.
In that, I am expected to, pay for my own health care. I'm expected to file my own taxes. I
Mm,
am expected to do my job,
right.
all without the limitations of, whatever the corporation sets for me. So, like, there are benefits to being an employee of an organization,
Mm-hmm.
but as an independent contractor, there are benefits to not being a part of an organization.
Right.
Like, for example, it's something really small and really stupid. Um, as an employee of an organization, I got to show up wearing the brand. I got to have the nice shirts, the nice
Yeah,
shoes,
I got
all
you.
this that
Right.
has all the company logos on it. And if I don't want to do that as an independent contractor, I'm not bound to that because I'm not an employee of the organization. That doesn't count towards me.
Right.
I
Okay.
get to set my own dress code. Or as an
You
employee,
specifically.
you have to be here from 8 until 5, and you have to have
Yeah.
an hour lunch break, and well, as an independent contractor, maybe my hours are 6 to 6, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not uh, constantly on all the time, but it's
Right.
like during 6 to 6, you can get a hold of me, and I will take up whatever issues you have, but it allows me the flexibility to say, take my dog out for a walk, go get my oil changed, go to a doctor's appointment. It's like I'm not bound by the same rules as an employee is.
Right. That makes
From
sense.
But now there are downsides. For example, it's up to me to make sure that I pay my taxes. It's up to me to make sure that I'm saving for retirement. It's up to
Oh
me to
yeah.
make sure that I'm charging my value and not getting worked beyond that.
Right.
Whereas, as an employee, it's like, this is your job, this is what you do this,
Right.
and you deal with scope creep differently as an employee versus as an independent contractor. So, for example, what do you know what scope creep is?
No.
Okay, scope creep is, so as an independent contractor, what you do is you specify and you say, this is what I'm going to do for your corporation. I'm going to perform X, Y, and Z tasks, or complete X, Y, and Z milestones.
Right.
Within that, these are the things that I will do. If the company says, hey, we'd like you to do this,
Yeah.
that's outside of scope. I don't
Right.
have to do that. But if you would like me to do that, we can renegotiate the contract and you can pay me more to do that. And
Mm.
independent contractors do that all the time.
But can't you just do it? Can't you just do it? It needs to
That's
get
what
done right now.
and that's what companies do. And
I
the
know.
answer
Yeah,
is,
I get that.
as an independent contractor, I say, I can do it right now. Here is the price. If you are willing to sign an agreement,
Yeah.
we can add that in.
I didn't
As
know
an
there was a word
employee,
for
though,
that.
as an employee, though, we have a word for scope creep in our contracts, and it's called "and other duties as assigned." And
Uh-huh.
it is bullshit. I hate that fucking phrase, and I've dealt with that from private to federal.
Mm,
Everybody has another duties as assigned, and that is their way of scope creeping.
yeah.
It's
Ew.
like, oh, I need you to do this. Well, that's not in my job description. No, it
Yeah, it
is right
is.
here.
It
See,
is.
and other duties as assigned.
Right. It's like
And it's
Amendment 9.
bullshit. It's
Amendment.
bullshit is what it is. And other
That's
duties
funny.
as assigned is bullshit.
Yeah.
It is a way to throw work onto people who might already be overworked. So, anyways,
Hmm.
back to independent contractors.
Yeah, yeah.
In the case of Uber and Lyft and all these other organizations, you don't have any other job. You don't get scope creep. It's literally you go pick up the person, you go pick up the thing, you deliver it to the place. That is literally the entire scope of your agreement,
Hmm.
other than don't go speeding and don't do all these other things that you can get busted for and get fired for.
Okay. Well, here's another
But
question. There's a line that says, wait, the person performs work is outside. I had it and then I lost it. No, I lost it. I'm sorry. This says that it protects unfair competition for businesses.
um, I don't
I didn't
necessarily
get that.
agree with that.
Okay.
So like unfair competition for businesses. I think
Yeah,
what
yeah,
they're
yeah.
trying to say is that so like for example, taxi companies have had to compete against Uber. Now, these people are employees of a company. They literally have unions, they have all these other things, they get benefits, they get all these other things,
Right, right, right.
but because what Uber and Lyft had done is just said, hey, we're the technology. We don't have this, employment overhead. We don't pay for
Yeah.
benefits. We don't pay for time off. We don't pay for.
I
They're
didn't
able
think
to
about the
charge lower
taxis.
rates than taxis. And so
Right.
what that has done is that's undercut the taxi market in a way that
Ah, it just
they can't keep up.
it just clicked in my head. California's attempt to protect the taxis is affecting the gig workers negatively.
It's and potentially affecting all independent contractors.
And if that goes federal, that could be
Then
an issue for all gig work all over the place.
and all independent contractors, because
Oof.
I may, there are people out there, they are independent contractors, they only work for one organization,
Yeah.
and that's
No,
all
I
they
get
ever
that.
do. That's all they ever do. And
Wow.
what this law attempts to codify is that, hey, if that's all you do is work for this organization, you're an employee. But if I don't want to be an employee and I want to be an independent contractor, then this potentially could screw up that relationship, because what that ends up doing is, number one, that takes the value that I make and lessens it, because the corporation is going to value what I do differently.
Yeah.
If I'm an employee, then they're going to codify me as an employee, and I'm going to end up getting paid a lower rate. Yeah, sure, maybe I'll have benefits, maybe I'll
Mm-hmm.
they'll take care of my taxes. That's other work that I won't have to do. But if I'm making really good money, they're going to value what I do compared to all these other industries and what they pay. And that value could be considerably lower bring home than what I'm bringing home now. And so
Right.
now I've effectively gone backwards because of this law.
Yeah. Okay.
Now,
That's
I think
gross.
if they made it a lot more specific and targeted this idea of the tech gig work industry,
Mm-hmm.
I think it would make more sense, because the way that this has played out is far more abusive, because what this has done is this competition, the idea should have been that the platforms were competing to get people to drive for them. Instead, these
Yeah.
people are literally on multiple platforms doing this,
Of course they are.
but they're now competing for all of these other jobs with all of these other people.
Yeah.
And so instead, you have people that are taking smaller, like you have people that'll take the big gigs first, but then what you have is more people competing for smaller tips
Yeah.
for something that, is really just kind of fucking gross
Well, yeah, if you got to drive 20
in a lot of
miles with
ways.
somebody's groceries to deliver them and they give you a $4 tip, that's paying for your gas these days. You know what I mean?
Right. Which is why if you're going to use these platforms, make sure you tip your driver.
Yeah.
Don't be a dick about that.
Agreed. And don't use DoorDash, like use Instacart. DoorDash puts so many fees on your shit. Your Big Mac will cost you $20, but you could
Well,
literally buy the hamburger meat and the buns for 5 and have a fresh meal when it arrived.
Well, and then on top of that, one of the other things that you have to keep in mind is that, all of like everybody sees all of these different fees that are attached. That's literally just the fees for the tech platform, unless
Yes,
it is
right.
unless it is absolutely stated where some states have codified laws. It's like you have to have a minimum that you pay in order for these
Mm-hmm.
orders. Like, and they'll lay that out.
Oh
They'll
yeah.
lay out what is a driver fee and versus what is the platform fee. But even still, like most of the time, those quote unquote drivers fees are like $3.
Yeah. Well, the app fee on DoorDash is $4, 3.99. And then there's
Yeah.
the taxes. And then yeah, there's the driver fee. I don't have a problem tipping the driver 7, $8. That's fine. It's
No,
just
and that's the thing is the driver fee is different from the tip, and that's
yeah.
what most people don't think about. They're like, oh, well, it's got the driver fee included. I don't have to do. Okay, well, if you ordered something on the opposite side of town and
Hmm.
they've got to spend 15 minutes getting to you,
Right.
like that $3 hardly compensates
That's
that.
right. That's right. Exactly. And then the tip, there's no tip. And then people will say I didn't get my order or I got my order wrong just to get the free food, but that affects the driver. Like that
Mhm.
affects the driver's score and the pickups they can make. Like my friend Sherry worked for Instacart and people did that all the time. I didn't get my groceries. Well, I took a picture of it. They're right there, but then it's Sherry's picture in Word against the customer. You know what
Well,
I
and that's
mean?
where a lot of these that's what a lot of these organizations have started doing is
Yeah.
that they've started requiring that the drivers take all the pictures, make
Mm-hmm.
sure like everything is on their like it's weird how some platforms do it, some platforms don't.
Yeah.
Some platforms are like, hey, look, it's on the restaurant if they screwed it up,
Mm-hmm.
because in the time of COVID, what happened is they sealed the food, so the driver couldn't
Right.
inspect and make sure that everything was there with the
That's
order. they
right.
they, they
That's
couldn't
right.
do that. And to me that makes sense, is I'm asking somebody to pick something up for me. I'm not asking them to thumb through my fucking food.
Right. I think it's kind of gross to have open delivered food. You know what I mean?
So that's one of those things where it's like, there are different expectations with this.
Mm.
Like unless my driver straight up fucking forgot a bag, it's like, and that's on the receipt. It's like, here, the bag one of two, bag two of two, and I only
Right.
get
Right.
one
Right.
bag. Okay, well then that's on the driver because they didn't pick up bag two.
Right.
But if I ordered a large bag of food and the restaurant forgot my fucking fries, that's on them. That's on the
Yeah.
restaurant. I don't think the driver's at fault for that,
No,
because I don't want the driver thumbing through my fucking order.
that's right. That's right. All right. Well, thank you for listening to Public Access America. My name has been Jason. Is your name still Jeffrey?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been here talking all week. We will be back next Thursday to have more discussions. I got a couple more candidates to talk about. And we're back. Hey, it's Thursday. It feels so good. Oh, just to let everybody know, this next week we're gonna be taking off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fucking
It's
vacation, holiday. I love
yeah.
this.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we talk a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
we don't always take time off for ourselves. So it's a
Yeah.
good idea
No.
that we do that.
Honestly, I have felt your stress from here. Like I have the ability to feel people's misery, and I just
I
feel
thought you were
yours.
just gonna say you had the ability to feel people, and I'm like, Jason, are you feeling me right now?
I can do that. I am I? Am I? You tell
Are you
me.
feeling me?
You tell me. How's
No,
that?
like,
How's that? Sorry.
did I just feel like a breeze on my leg or something? No, like, so I took off Thursday and Friday this last week, and it felt great.
Yeah.
So the thing is like, I have never really had great time off,
Right.
like the ability to earn good time off. And every time that I do earn time off, the problem is that it's literally just enough that over the course of, like, just having kids and having a family and
Yeah.
pets and all this other fun stuff, it's like you got to take days off for certain things. It's like, oh, okay, I got a
Mm-hmm.
kid who's sick. I've got
Right.
to run errands for myself. I've got doctor's appointments. I've got this, that, and the other. And so by the time it was actually vacation time, I'd have maybe 2 or 3 days off of time for myself. And then I would have zero time banked up for what if something happened? What if I got sick?
Right.
What if I was in an accident? What if, I had a family member die and I needed to go to a funeral? Like I just didn't have time off.
I worked at a place where it was about 400% people legitimately from Mexico, although there was people from all regions of the Latin Americas. But every January, when these guys would get their 3 weeks vacation, they only worked 1 week of January and they would take the rest of the time off. But then, like around December, when I was like the guy that had been filling in and needed to take my time, they were like, "That's not fair. You're taking off all the time." Yeah, because I couldn't, because you took it all off, but they were super stressed at the end of the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so it was really nice, like to be able to just take some time
Yeah,
off and not really do anything that, was work related, let my mind actually like go to sleep essentially and shut off. It's like I don't have to think about this.
I love
And
it.
and so, I spent Thursday running around doing errands for myself. I'm going to be restringing a guitar for my
Ooh,
youngest to play. So going through, getting all of that, talking guitars and all that other fun stuff. On Friday, it was a nice day, therapy
mm,
day, all sorts of good stuff to happen.
yeah,
And then, Saturday I was supposed to get tattooed, but that didn't work out. So I ended up making an emergency trip to the gun range. That was
nice.
fantastic. It's just, and of course the weather has been super nice. And so
Mm,
by the time when we're done with this, I'm actually headed outside to go just do my usuals, de-poop the yard, mow the
mm-hmm.
lawn and, you know, spend a little time outside,
Yeah,
and, inside because I got to get ready for the week and all that other fun stuff.
of course. Okay.
But
Well, I'm glad
nice
you
thing
got
is
that.
that I'm going. I have a full week's worth of work, but then I'm going into a holiday weekend, so I get a 3-day
Yeah,
weekend. It's like
yeah.
that feels great. I'm enjoying that.
It does
Um,
feel great.
especially because I just kind of got to be like, fuck it, I'm gonna go find myself some French toast and
Mm,
just get up and fucking go do that. You know,
nice. Hey, I tried oat milk, by the way.
hey,
I bought some. It's
you bought some?
delicious. Yeah, but
I
then I had to ask Google, like, is oat milk high in sugar? And Google was like, it's the highest sugar milk. And I was like, oh, okay. So
uh,
I can't really use it.
that's
They
why
did,
I make my own.
yeah, that's what they did say. Like the homemade or the raw form is low in sugar. It's just
Yep.
sugars are added in the process.
Yep, I make my own. And
Yeah.
so like mine is pretty low in sugar, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest. And for a reason, because it's not because I have blood sugar issues, but because like
Oh.
I would eat way too much sugar as a kid. And so it's like, for me it's like sugar blasted, sugar frosted, sugar puffs with sugar
Uh-huh.
milk, and it's like Christ.
I still like
I'll have a
that.
large diabetes with a side of large diabetes.
Yeah, welcome to my world. Yeah.
Instead it's like, okay, you know what, it's like I need to make my own, so that way it's like I don't have all of this stuff
You get to pick
in
and
it.
choose where the sugar goes,
So
right?
literally like the oat milk that I make is it's literally oats, vanilla,
Mm,
and I use agave in order to sweeten it up a little bit.
I like that. You know what I bought? I bought protein powder. And
Hmm.
like I'll just drink some of that and it seems to really work. It levels out my hunger, you know what I mean? And it
Hmm.
doesn't raise my sugar. So I was really excited about that. I think I was overdoing how much I got to get my ratio. I don't read directions, Jeffrey. I just buy
Well,
stuff and learn how to use it as we go.
well,
But
there
that
you
can
go.
cause issues in your body that you really don't want to
Mm.
happen, you know?
I think one of the best finds for me is, so there's a brand of ice cream out there called So Delicious, and they
Mm.
make um, non-dairy ice creams.
Ooh,
And so I found one that they call Wonder Milk, and it's oat, and or it's coconut,
really?
and it is there. So I've tried a few different ones that they have. They have a cookies and cream one, which I liked, but it's like, okay, I would really only want to do this one every once in a while.
Yeah.
I had the chocolate fudge one and it was like, okay, it's okay, it's not what I
Mm-hmm.
want. But their strawberry one is like fucking fantastic, and it's super
Awesome.
good. And I'm like, oh shit, I could make myself a strawberry milkshake or a strawberry malt with this
What?
because I
Yeah,
could do it with oat
yeah.
milk. And I was like, oh fuck. So
I like that.
I have yet to do this. So it's something that I'm going to do
Mm,
because I have not had one in so fucking long, and
yeah.
it's one of my favorite fucking things.
Oh, I like that. That sounds
So
good.
I'm excited for the fact that I could have a strawberry milkshake or a strawberry. I got to make it myself, but I'm okay with that because I fucking love those things.
Yeah. I tried the low sugar Rebel ice cream that was like gluten free, lactose free, like everything free.
Hmm.
And it's like the space ice cream. You know, I don't know if you remember that. It was like chalk, but if you put it in your mouth, it would melt.
Yep, yep. Nope, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Which was delicious, by the way, when I was a kid.
Um,
Some of that and
let's see here.
Tang, and I was out the door.
Dairy Queen makes a coconut milk dilly bar now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I
I mean,
am
and it was
so
funny
happy.
because it was really funny because like I was hanging out with with my buddy before him and his family PCS'd out to another part of the country, and uh they're like, oh, we're gonna go to Dairy Queen. I'm like, oh, that's cool. They're like, do you want anything? I'm like, I will literally die.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And so I was sitting, I'm just like, whatever, I'll just chill with you guys. It's perfectly fine. It's a nice day out,
Mhm.
whatever. And so as we drive up, and it's like, whatever. I don't, you guys get what you want. I don't care. It's, fine by me.
Right.
And then he just goes, hey, do you guys happen to have any dairy-free things? And they're like, oh yeah, we have a coconut milk dilly bar. And like my eyes went huge. I was like, I'm sorry, you have a what?
Yeah. I don't know what a dilly bar is, but yeah, give me two.
So dilly bars, the what they used to look like in the old days, is they were like an ice cream disc that had the popsicle stick shoved in it, and then it was dipped in chocolate.
Right. Okay.
Oh man, those things were so fucking good. I loved those things as a kid, but of course, once I became lactose intolerant, those things literally
Hmm.
fucking kill me.
Wow.
And so I haven't had one in probably 20 years because I couldn't have them.
Right.
And
And
then
you're not
suddenly,
alone. You're not alone, by the way. Like
no,
there is millions of people that have various forms of
like
lactose intolerance, you know?
and that's the thing, is like Dairy Queen was always like a great fucking memory for me
Yeah.
because like nobody went to Dairy Queen, in like when we went to Dairy Queen, it was great because there was like hot fudge sundaes or
Right. Banana
strawberry
splits. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
blizzards and shit like that. But because I can't have dairy, like I don't get to go. It's like I'm suddenly no longer in their market, and that sucks.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
I loved their ice cream, I loved their blizzards, I loved all of that shit, but I can't have it.
Yeah. I
And then
remember
so
as
to
a
find out
kid,
it's
my air conditioning went out, so my mom took me to dinner at Dairy Queen to get a banana split, and that was the best moment of my life, my young life. So, yeah, Dairy
oh
Queen is a
yeah,
great memory. But I know how
oh
that
yeah,
like I can't eat bread, and so I'm like fast food doesn't like me because even the chicken they put breading on, like
right,
so.
right, right.
And I had crystals, and that killed me for 4 days. Like the white bread in it just killed me. So I know how you feel, and I really like that Dairy Queen made that move because I think I don't understand why fast food doesn't understand this more, that the bread is the enemy, that's the sugar. You're still putting, it's like you could eat your Subway with a candy cane. It's the same sugar to me, you know?
Literally, and that's just it. Is like a lot of these places, they're like, why is our market shrinking? It's like
Yeah.
because we can't fucking eat there.
Right. Like Arby's, we have the meat. Yeah, but you don't have the bread, buddy, you know?
Right. It's like literally, it's like, some of these places, it's like, look, one of my favorites was getting a fucking McDonald's twist cone. I mean,
Hmm.
granted, the ice cream machine doesn't fucking work anyways, but
But
there's a
it's
reason why
yogurt,
it
right?
turns out.
I
It
fig
still
I
can't.
f Can I tell you something?
What?
I figured it out.
What?
Antifa has figured out that white people can't do without McDonald's. So they've infiltrated McDonald's and made sure that the shake machine is always broken.
There's actually a lawsuit against a company, and it turns out what they did was they put in a code so that way the ice cream machine would break down every so often,
Oh, okay.
and then you would have McDonald's would have to pay to have their tech come out and quote unquote fix the problem, which was reset the machine.
Hmm.
and reset that error, and then the ice cream machine would work just fine. And I don't know how the fuck they figured this out, but it turns out it's not that McDonald's actually sucks at, keeping the ice cream machine running. It's that the
Yeah,
company
yeah.
that made the machine was like, we're gonna make so much money
Interesting.
off of them, and
Yeah,
you're
and they
fucked.
did, didn't they?
They did.
And they
And
also
so
upsold the coffees, like the cappuccinos that McDonald's has. You don't have it? I guess I'll take a mocha cappuccino because it's ice
so
cream. Yeah. That's
so yeah.
interesting. So I have something good. So I have someone good for you. Do you want to hear about something good?
Let's hear.
I I found this candidate, Tiffany Smiley, who is running in the Republican primary for your U.S. House seat,
Hmm.
and like you said, it was like I think I was talking about that in the first 10 minutes of last show. There's an alternative in the MAGA movement, in the conservative Republican
Hmm.
movement, as I'm scrolling. Hey Raven, we're gonna talk about Raven Pierce too. But Tiffany Smiley just like I was like, who's gonna go against? Oh wait, let me talk about this. Bob Hageland is an election denier that's running for U.S. House Senate on the Republican side, but his website literally goes to his Secretary of State campaign where he says he'll never work with a Democrat, never work with a Republican, and only wants to overturn the election. So if you see Bob Hagelin anywhere, I'm sure he's a man and he looks like a big name, but no, he sucks. Don't do that.
Well, and basically all you'll see, like if he submits anything to the voter pamphlet, it's gonna literally be like just
Yeah.
one sentence. You see this stuff constantly.
Yes, that's the point. They want to stay as anonymous as possible so you don't question them. You just kind of they hope that if they put four anonymous names, you'll pick one. You know what I mean?
Right.
Damn it. I know she's here. I have a big note full of a lot of people, and I'm on Patty Murray. But let me just say, Tiffany Smiley. So I went to her Twitter. Her husband is the first serviceman to be active duty and blind. He actually lost his eyesight because of a suicide bomber in the Middle
Hmm.
East, and he came back. And Tiffany, she was a triage nurse, and then she devoted her time to taking care of him. And like the military was like, you need to sign this, we want to get him out of the army right now, he can't, he doesn't qualify. And she's like, no. And so she bucked the system and stuff. But I think that's neat because you know how I feel about
Yeah,
blind people, right?
absolutely.
I think everybody should have a little empathy. But here's a line that I found on her website, and tell me if you think this is actually Republican. Our diverse economy demands common sense ideas and a commitment to problem solving for the good of our state. Now, who said that before, Jeffrey?
Well, I mean, sounds like something we might have said.
Exactly. I mean, people think that I think people think we're partisan, but that's because Republicans aren't doing a lot of things. But I also noticed that 34, so there was a vote for, there was burn pits in Iraq, and soldiers actually developed cancer for this, right?
Yep.
And the problem is that the VA won't designate that as a war injury, so they can't get the benefits or the treatments for it. And the bill was to address that, to fix that, to give them their accountability. 174 Republicans voted against that bill in the House, 34 voted for it. And Adam Kinzinger voted for it, which I
Hmm.
thought was expected. Matt Gaetz, my representative, voted for it, which I
Hmm.
found really interesting. And Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the Republicans, did not. And I found that fascinating,
Hmm.
right? But Tiffany, she cares about our military, and I like that. And I like that. I like what she said about committing to working for compromise, right? What Republican says that? It made me feel great. Like, okay, it's not all MAGA. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing is like there are common sense conservatives out there. There
Mhm.
always have been. That's just that they are drowned out by, this weird vocal, legitimate minority. And the thing is that because Trump has the kind of power that he does right now, there's the group of people that are bucking him. There's the group of people that are embracing him, and
Right.
then there's the group of people who just really aren't saying anything about
Right. They hope he just goes away. The Mitch McConnell theory, they'll take his ass out for us.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think that's, one of the biggest problems is that, Trump has enough presence that if you buck him um too broadly, if
Mm-hmm.
you or too publicly, like he's proven that he's trying to primary your ass. And
Right.
in most cases he's losing that. Like he's picking
Yeah.
losers.
Yeah.
And so the thing is like I would love to see them just, completely dump his ass. And honestly, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen until he just
Mm-mm.
croaks.
Yeah. America First is a copy paste movement. If you want to be a MAGA candidate, all you have to do is copy paste some lame shit that you don't
You
believe and
you
then
just
try
have
and
to
stick to it.
yeah, you just have to say something like illegals out,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
prayer
yeah.
in school first,
Yeah.
only about life, and
Hunter Biden.
yeah, something about the Biden crime family, and voila, you literally are a MAGA candidate. Like you don't
Right.
actually have to offer a solution, you just have to like hit these touch points,
Right.
and that's it. Whereas, like, actual conservative policy looks more like, the government is overreaching in all of these things. We want to get them out of
Mm-hmm.
it. We are overspending drastically on all these things. We need to get them out of it. My problem with the current conservative movement is it's more theocratic than it is like fiscal.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and that's
Yes.
and that's my biggest problem is that they're focused more on the theocracy of government rather than on the finances of government and the fact that there is so much government overreach in a number of different areas.
Yeah,
Like they're not
America First isn't looking to shrink government. It's actually an expansion of government.
Mhm. It
Okay.
it is. It's just, they're expanding it in different ways. It's like we're creating all of these different things. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
not very conservative. Creating new government agencies is not conservative.
Right. Exactly. And something else that Tiffany Smiley, by the way, running for Washington State, if you're going to look for a Republican in the primaries, people, this is really your option. There's a couple non middle of the road. I don't know. I just find her fascinating. So she wants to work with Washington State's agriculture community to protect family farms, you know?
It's great.
And like who says that? Like when was the last time you heard she wants to work on protecting our environment? You know, like who
That was always but the thing is that that was always a conservative value,
yeah.
even if it wasn't specifically stated. It's just
Yeah.
that instead of saying things like, environmental justice and all of this, like the left currently does, what the right always used was conservation. Like
Yes.
I grew up with conservation. It was
Of course.
conservation of natural resources. The understanding was is that we were going to use those resources, but you had to be very smart about it. You
Yeah.
had to conserve those resources. You had to protect them in different ways. And unfortunately, like there's a lot of people out there that don't seem to hit that touch point at all. And it's like conservation and care for the environment kind of go hand in hand, really.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know, it's like any farmer who doesn't believe in conservation is a poor farmer. Why? Because they understand that the resource that they're using is finite. They have to add
Yeah.
chemicals or sprays or any number of different things in order
Right.
to make their crop grow. And if you treat your land like shit, you ain't gonna get any crop out of it.
Right. If you replant on the same land over and over, you'll just deplete it. You have to, yeah, there's a lot of things farmers do. But I love the family farm. Um, so my friend said, I heard this thing about upwards gardens. And I was like, 3D gardens. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I think that's a great idea for the inner city. I would listen to an episode about that. And I was like,
And you're like,
listen to our episode food about 3D co-ops in food deserts. Yeah, we got that from Jerry Say of Tallahassee, and we've been talking about it for 2 years. You know, like surrounding a community with family farms. I love these ideas of getting fresh food that is fresh. You know, not freeze dried, not a tomato that's frozen in route so that it's still yeah, all these weird things. But I really I wanted to address Tiffany Smiley because there's an option out there.
well, and
Um,
here's the thing: is like even in Washington State for the longest time, our Secretary of State was Kim Wyman, a
mhm,
Republican. And the
right.
thing was is that Kim Wyman was like the Republican that that you kind of grew up with. Is like, does did Kim disagree with the Democrats and some things?
Hope
Absolutely.
so. Hope so.
Absolutely. But did Kim go, the election was, a fake or a fraud or a false flag
Right.
or any of this other shit? No, because, the thing about election security isn't really a partisan issue.
No.
And so, making sure that the elections here were free, fair, and safe was extremely important.
Yeah.
And Kim flat out defended her record on it. And she's like, look, it's like, what am I going to say here? The election wasn't a fraud because, number one, I still got elected.
Right. And amazing news, everybody. It's one ballot. There was an electric election fraud on the top of the ticket and not down. So either you have to say that there was election fraud on the entire ballot or none of the ballot,
It's
right?
like my friend Adrian Fontes, who was the Maricopa
Yeah.
County recorder. You know, Biden won. Biden won the election in Maricopa County. My
Hmm.
buddy Adrian, who's a Democrat, lost the county recorder's gig. He
Right.
was voted out, and that's the way it is. It's not that it was rigged, because if it was rigged, my buddy Adrian would have still been the Maricopa County recorder, but he got voted out of office.
Right. Yeah,
So it's
and
not this.
Jocelyn Benson in Michigan, the same thing. Like there is no proof, you know?
It relies on all of these crazy conspiracy theories that just aren't true. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, if my buddy Adrian, could have rigged the election, you would have expected to see him also win,
Right.
not get voted out and then be like, hey, look, democracy happens.
I
Literally, he did this.
yeah.
He did this series of Facebook posts. He's like, look, democracy happens. I was happy to be your recorder for 4 years. You voted me out. I'm going to show the next guy how I did things.
Yeah.
And he's going to take that and he's going to run with that from there. All I can do is show him that, I tried to do things free, fair, and by the book. And guess what? The current recorder, who's a Republican, has flat out defended the way things were run.
Yeah.
It's like there was no fraud. I've got all of this stuff here. Everything is documented, detailed, and laid out. It's like I've
Right.
gone through this so many times. There was no fraud. There
Or
was no
nobody's
fraud on a scale that would have changed the election.
well, unless
On a
you and
scale that would have changed the election. There's
well,
always there's always fraud in a vote. Why do I
well,
say
no,
that?
what I'm talking about is the fake elector scam. You
Well,
know what I mean?
that's a fraud, but it didn't change the course of the election.
But it could have.
It could have, but it didn't, because
Right,
we
right.
have
Because we have
processes in
people,
place.
yeah, we have people and processes in place to defend and protect from both sides, by the way.
Right. And in which case, let's take that issue up. It's like, look, if you think that your party, whoever,
Hmm.
if you think that your party should have a certain number of electors because your party won a percentage, then
Yeah.
here's my advice: take out the fucking electors, because
Or
we already vote by percentage.
or
That's the popular election.
take out the electoral college, yeah.
And that's the thing is that everybody wants to get rid of the electoral college when they lose. Nobody wants to
Hmm.
get rid of it when they win.
But I think we should get rid of it. I didn't like it after George Bush, you know what I mean? And I've been watching it ever since. A Republican hasn't won the popular vote since what, Reagan?
No, Bush won the popular vote. The
Did
second
he?
one.
Wait, the
Yeah,
second one?
the second one he
Oh,
won the
okay.
popular vote. The
Okay.
first one he didn't. No.
Okay.
The second one he did win the popular vote.
All right. Well, I like Tiffany Smiley. My only concern would be that electing a Republican would give Mitch McConnell a majority, and I think Mitch McConnell is gross. I think Donald Trump came into office and said, "Where's the bathroom?" and Mitch McConnell pointed him to the SCOTUS bathroom, the SCOTUS room, you know? Like they just took a giant dump on that place. And I don't like the way the Senate works, but I also see her as being more of an independent. There's a lack of like political experience, but I think she would be the one I would want getting the experience, not a MAGA rag. You know what I mean?
Yep,
And that's
I'm
just
with
me.
you.
Like all of those things we talked about, our environment, our education system, all of that stuff, that's what I'm saying you need to take care of before you focus on a Hunter Biden. Like, yes, you can start an investigation of Hunter
Hmm.
Biden, but you don't have to make a big deal about it. What you should be making a big deal about is legislation,
Like
laws, you know, like
the
what your
reason,
job is.
and like I said, the reason there why I can see why some people think it's a big issue. Like until you show me, until you find proof that, there have been orders to purposefully hide this,
Mm,
it falls under the line of every other investigation that takes place into similar matters.
that's my point. And
And
here's the
it's
thing.
no different.
But why Joe Biden? Why not Obama trying to get his kids into a good school? What about
It's
George
the
Bush
material, it's the
using
material
his?
on the laptop.
Like
That's
what about
that's what
What about Jimmy Carter's?
it's the material that they found on the laptop. That's
Okay.
that's the difference. It's the if you're just gonna, and that's
So this is the
legitimately,
whole Democrats are pedophiles thing.
that's exactly what that
This is
line is.
proof of
Or
all of the QAnon conspiracies.
that's exactly what that is. and
Uh,
and and it's that whole investigate every Republican for X, investigate every Democrat for Y. Look, if you have proof of wrongdoing, absolutely investigate it, period, end of
mhm.
story.
Yeah,
But it's that when you're constantly going hunting for something, you're probably going to find something, number one. But in
yeah,
this case, nobody was actually hunting for anything, they just found it. And in which
right.
case it was like, okay, well, there's a problem here.
Well, I mean, everybody was scouring at the time for anything. Like, yeah,
And which is
somebody
where,
stole Joe Biden's daughter's diary. You know, like they were looking for anything and everything at the time, and that's kind of my point. Like, the right scoured the earth for. I mean, they scoured Ukraine for information about Joe Biden. It hasn't come out yet. We need to move on. Like, if you want us to move on from Donald Trump and the Russia Mueller scandal, like we have, like or the Ukraine scandal like we have, or the 1-6 insurrection, which we're trying to, then you got to move past this stuff too. We got to get into real stuff. Unless you're talking about always investigating, like we said, the panel that investigates a presidency.
in
Just
which case, if you're telling me that, somehow there's a politician that isn't a crook in some way, shape, or form, I'm going to laugh at
exactly,
you. Because I guarantee,
exactly.
because then it's like, okay, if we're going to investigate every president post presidency, why aren't we investigating every senator post Senate candidate, every House
And
member
their
post House
family
candidate?
and their
Why aren't we not,
children.
and in which case it's like, okay, so then at that point, literally, it's like you have the Department of Investigations, the Department of Political Investigations, the Department of Investigations of
Yeah,
Investigations. It's just, it's
it's too
insane.
much.
It's
It's just too
it's
much,
it's
right?
realistically, it's like name a politician who hasn't taken something and then given something back because,
Hmm.
they have been donated to by a pack.
Right.
Of
My
course they've given something back. That's what the fuck happens.
my only point is do your job before you do your hobby. If you wanna investigate the president from the other party, you can do that when you're done with your chores. Like, fix climate change, give us our rights, and then, shrink the do all that government stuff you want. And then when you're sitting around going, "Hey, we solved everything," let's investigate this stuff too. Because the DOJ investigates. They don't need the Senate to tell them to do it. They investigate, and they investigate
Yeah.
lots of stuff. And a
Yep.
lot of stuff they investigate and nothing
Hmm.
happens. Look, Hillary Clinton had a confidential email that was changed to classified on her server when they were erasing it because she was out of that office. She wasn't the Secretary of State anymore. Like, but that was something that needed to be investigated, right? But
Hmm.
it wasn't anything. Like, they made a big deal out of it. But then, okay, so we investigated her for that. Do we investigate Donald Trump for his use of an unsecure iPhone in the Oval Office? Like, where does it end, right?
Well,
Is there some crimes that are just petty bullshit that we need to learn from and address instead of convicting people, you know?
or not convicting anybody, because that's legitimately where most of this has gone.
Right.
It's like we've spent a ton of man hours on stuff like that, but we've
Yeah.
got like what, 3, 4 convictions out of
That's
it.
my point. That's my point. We spent a buttload of money,
That's a
you
ton of money
know?
to spend on that. That's a ton of money to spend on the judicial system.
Yeah.
And really, you uncover, yeah, did you uncover some wrongdoing that probably needed to be prosecuted? Yeah, sure, but it wasn't what you thought it was going to be. Period, end of story. and
Right.
and that's the thing is that through the course of normal investigations, that's what happens.
Hmm.
And with this, I expect it to be much the same. Through the course of normal investigations, if something else comes up, it will be addressed.
Right. I mean, the right had plenty of stuff when Donald Trump did
Mhm.
something and they were like, oh, it's no big deal. It just happens. It's not an emolument, you know? And that's fair if they feel that way. What I feel is that the Constitution is their Bible. Like, I thought about this in
No, it's not. No,
religion,
it's
and
not.
it should be. Like when you take your oath of office, you are kind of saying, God, you are my driver, but the Constitution is my North Star. That's how it should be because that contract was made between the people and the federal government. And the federal government has been doing that scope creeping for 200 years. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And that's the problem. And the way they're doing it by scope creeping, instead of making amendments and laws and passing these things, they're not doing it correctly. They're doing it under the table. Like we're just going to creep on you a little more, you know? And
Mhm.
both Republicans and Democrats do that.
Oh,
Somebody
absolutely.
wanted to pass the domestic terrorism law, and because Democrats were passing it, it must be good, you know? And I was like, but turning our government's intelligence inward on us deserves a conversation, right? Like,
Well, and that's the thing is that when you look at domestic terrorism, like
hmm.
you're going to have to define that very, very carefully,
Yeah, I mean
as you
that's my
should,
point.
as you should.
Is Jason a domestic terrorist? Maybe under a different administration, talking bad about
Well,
Donald Trump would make me a fucking extremist, you know?
and that's the thing is that you have all of that crazy shit that's been floated that
Hmm.
talking bad about the president shouldn't be allowed. I'm like, it's the First Amendment. Literally being able to shit talk your president is literally the First Amendment. Or well, if I show up angry to a school board meeting, am I going to be labeled a domestic terrorist? No, you can be angry about stuff. That's not domestic terrorism. You just can't threaten violence. And that's already been decided in Supreme Court law. You get to be angry about stuff, but the moment you threaten violence, that's not freedom of speech. That's been decided very clearly. And any number of different issues that have come up. It's just that with domestic terrorism, it waffles so much because, you've got literally, right now it's like you've got people who say BLM was domestic terrorism, but somehow January
Right.
6th was, perfectly fine. And
Yeah.
it's like you guys can't, unless you guys can decide on what domestic terrorism is.
Hmm.
It's like I see where there's absolutely a lot of open room to interpret domestic terrorism in a way that would end up getting people thrown in jail for what would be
Yeah.
considered freedom of speech.
That
And
slippery slope, right?
when that's the tough part is that, is domestic. I mean, the DOJ has come out and said for multiple years in a row now, especially under the Trump administration, that domestic terrorism is the biggest current threat that we face in this country.
But it's undefined.
But they no, it's strategically undefined.
Well, it
That's the
falls into
problem.
buckets. It's defined separately into minutia that we just call domestic
It's not even it
terrorism.
it's not even defined that well. That's the problem.
That's my
It is
point. Yeah.
politically defined and depends on who is in office.
Right. White motivated violence is domestic terrorism, but so is Muslim created domestic terrorism or religious domestic terrorism, but they're all domestic terrorism, but
Because
they're so poorly defined because there's not one thing, right? You're like you
well, it's
said,
like
it's
it's
political.
it's like for example, it's like what's the difference, if somebody who, worshipped a different religion
Hmm.
bombed a Planned Parenthood, they would call it domestic terrorism. But when
Right.
it's a Christian that does it, it's not. That doesn't make
Right.
any sense.
When a white supremacist Dylan Ruth goes into a Baptist church and kills people, it's a black hate crime, right? Like it's a race crime. But when somebody goes to a spa and kills Asian people, it's an Asian hate crime. But then it gets to a mosque and suddenly it's replacement theory, you know? Like
Right.
it's so
It's
weird to me. Like it all fits under the same banner, but the way they treat it and prosecute it different
and
makes
that's
me.
and that's the
confused.
problem. And
Yeah.
that's the problem is that they refuse to create a specific set of definitions, and that's
Hmm.
it's it's literally by design.
And I don't like vague when it comes to our government.
No, it's by design, and
Right.
that's honestly why you haven't seen
Yeah,
a real push towards prosecuting domestic terrorism.
of
And
course.
because what's going to happen is one side's going to push and prosecute differently than the other side
Hmm.
rather than create a standard set of definitions. And when things fall into that category, doesn't matter who does it, you prosecute it as domestic terrorism.
That's
and
right.
and so that's why you consistently see nothing done.
Yeah,
The Republicans don't want to have to arrest their supporters for doing things that would fall under a designation of domestic terrorism.
that's right. What I think is funny, I realized that Donald Trump and the MAGA gang, they need an enemy because if the truth came out that there wasn't an enemy of equal importance on the other side, they would just be assholes. You
Well,
know,
I mean,
like,
you look at what we had, when we worked together well.
hmm.
We had the Soviet Union against us. And there was there was an understanding. It's like the left and the right didn't get along, but we had a greater problem at hand.
Right.
And a lot of people thought, okay, well, with Russia doing what Russia's doing now, maybe there'll be a chance that. And it turns out Russia's completely inept.
Yeah, and CPAC is being held in Hungary. Like,
So,
and going to Budapest. So I don't know, man. When your party is fucking having its conference in a foreign, like, social dictatorship, like, Hungary is so weird to me because it was so socialist and now it's becoming so autocratic. It's just in the middle of, like, they get free healthcare, but they don't have a fair vote. Like, it's so weird, you know?
that sounds like any other socialist country, like
Yeah.
Venezuela.
But you can't be gay.
Sounds like
Yeah,
Venezuela.
I know. Yeah.
It's just
Oh,
it's literally just Venezuela, but for Republicans.
right. And that's only because, well, Venezuela seems to be the point we can point at. Like, socialism's bad. What about Finland? What about Sweden? What about, like, Denmark?
You
No.
can't, well, number one, they're not socialist, and number
Oh,
two, they're
okay.
democratic socialist, and number
Hmm.
three, it's the Nordic model, which is entirely its own breed.
And
And
I would,
number
yeah,
four, it actually works there. So it's like, what are you going to do? Oh my
yeah.
God, look at how unhappy the citizens are.
I know.
All four of them are consistently in the top five of happiest countries in the world.
Everything is a combination of everything, right? It should be.
Right.
Like, we have elements of socialism with Medicare, right? We have
Absolutely.
elements of capitalism. We have elements of autocracy, right? Like, because there's only four baby formula makers and Abbott is 43% of that. Like, there's an issue with this stuff. But a body that regulates itself will never rein itself in. And that's kind of the problem with Congress, isn't it? They make their antitrust laws. We don't make it for them.
It's like, oh, well, all of these things are insider trading. Okay, so what happens when you guys do it?
Yeah.
Uh,
We're
don't tell
just
me it's perks of the job. Fuck you.
we're just citizens. We're just citizens doing the best we can. There's nothing.
Like
Yeah.
that was the funniest thing ever. Like we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
when regular everyday people figured out how to make the stock market go to hell,
Yeah.
with GameStop,
Right.
it's not that the fucking government was like, "Yo, you guys are fucking things up," because they were doing what anybody else does. It's just that they figured out how to do it in force together,
And they did it publicly so that
and they
other
did it
people could
publicly.
see. Right. And that pulls back
Meanwhile,
the facade. So Elizabeth Warren is like, "Oh no, this is bad." Why is it bad? You don't
what
trade? Like, you're not in the market, are you, Elizabeth? I don't think so.
and so it's like, well, we got to protect. Well, who are you trying to
Yeah,
protect?
the citizens that are paying.
Not the millionaires and
Yeah,
billionaires, because you've been using this line that says that, you know,
yeah.
they're the bad ones, but when a bunch of everyday fucking trolls figure out how to make money off of the same fucking scheme that you guys use, just
Right.
differently, so that's bad somehow.
Hmm.
Okay, well, it's either bad for you guys too, or fuck it, it's fair game. Take your pick.
It's bad. And I'm worried that MAGA is so bad that people will vote for any Democrat and Democrats won't have to be good. That's my concern. You know what
It
I
should
mean?
be anybody's concern. It's like you're not voting
Right.
for a good candidate. You're just voting for a candidate that's not that candidate.
Right. I mean,
Like,
honestly, if Patty Murray gets investigated for a scandal, I'm not going to go to the next ranking Democrat that I don't know. I like Tiffany Smiley. Like, I would almost vote for her. Like, so,
I'll have to use a John Madden quote essentially on this. It's like when you have two bad candidates running against each other and you pick one of
hmm
them, you didn't pick a good candidate. You picked
right.
a bad candidate out of two bad candidates.
Right. And these candidates have to realize that we know they're bad. I
It's
think
like,
they think that we're stupid. Like, we don't get it. Like, that MAGA guy thinks that I'm stupid. Like, I'm living in another world because I believe climate change is more important than prayer in school. You know, like, and by the way,
you ain't
like
gonna get to pray in school if nobody can
uh,
fucking eat.
and nobody has ever restricted anybody's ability to bow their head in silence and
No,
pray.
seriously, like in my high school, you had, like, we had, the teachers couldn't lead
Right,
prayer in school, for
right.
example, but you actually had students that did a lunchtime Bible class. Like
hmm
they did it themselves. They had their own little worship music and everything. I didn't
Yeah,
go to it, but I
no,
also didn't care.
yeah,
Like, cool. Nobody tried to stop them. Nobody said they couldn't do it. Like, I don't know where they thought that this was under attack. And to me, looking at freedom of religion, speech and
hmm
expression, it's like, because the teachers are, paid government employees, do I think that they should be leading prayer in school? No.
no, no,
But if the students are like, hey, we're gonna, during this, particular study hall, we're gonna
yeah,
have this area where we go out and we, you know, pray,
hmm
around the flag, whatever. That's
sure,
your thing. When the students do it, that's on them. If the teachers want to join in, okay, fine.
right,
But it's just, as long as it's student led and the teachers aren't mandating it,
right.
or that's perfectly fine. Or there's a Supreme Court case right now where one of the football coaches, after every game, would go, pray out in the middle of the field, and
Right.
anybody who wanted to join in could join in. It's like, shit, that shit happened all the time when I was in school.
Me
Did
too.
I
Yeah.
join in? No.
Yep.
Did
But you
I
could have.
care? Yeah, I could have, yes.
Yeah.
Did I
And
did
that
I
didn't mean
care?
you weren't
No.
friends with people that did that,
Right.
right? Like, I had friends that would join prayer circles, and I had friends that would then come and join me at the bowling alley and get high as fuck, you know? Like,
Right. So, like, it doesn't really matter. Like,
right.
it's one of those things where, like, I don't really care. It's like, if people want to pray at a school, that's
Right.
up to them as long as it's not mandated. I don't give
But
a shit.
there's the thing is that the MAGA guy will say, you want to take my right to religion away. And
No.
nobody.
I just don't want the school to mandate it.
Right, but what I'm saying is what he's telling his supporters is don't even talk to them because they'll steal your fucking soul. Don't find out that they're
Which is
not your
fine.
enemy, right? And so
Right, which
by
is dumb.
making an enemy makes a war, but there's nobody on the other side fighting you. You're attacking and we're defending, but we're not striking on offense like we could, you know? That's what amazed me. I told my friend, I was like, I feel like I went to the western wall of MAGA, touched it,
Mhm.
and it crumbled. Like, I just want to keep pushing on it, you know? I think that's fantastic. Yay.
So,
Yeah, I get it. So
yeah.
there's an independent out here that I think is fascinating. So what I did was I went on Twitter and I made an hourly tweet about I want people to share the candidates, the good, the bad, the ugly, just candidates that we need to know about because I saw a tweet about um, an indigenous person running for Congress in North Carolina, and that's historical. Deja
Mhm.
was historical in her attempt, and so I wanted that. And we had Raven Pierre the progressive, who's running as an independent in Washington State's race. And I did say I would mention them because they actually volunteered information about the issues that they care about.
Hey,
And
fantastic.
some of it was reframing the conversation about election fraud and all of this stuff. The other one was transparency, not in elections per se, but in the entire political process.
Mhm.
So a lot of times what happens is the Senate will take up an issue. Somebody will call cloture, and then what that happens is, and then it's Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell in a room talking about it, and then deals are made, and then they come out and say, "This is what we're doing, guys," and everybody follows the plan. What what Raven is saying is we should be done with that. We should have transparency in everything. And the other thing is, like I told you, term limits and not taking corporate donations. And I really like that about Raven Pierre. I don't think Raven understood that we were going. I told him we were going to be talking about him today, you know,
Right.
and I was like, but I would like to get you on the show in the future to talk about some of this stuff. And he was like, Sunday. I was like, no, not Sunday. I don't know why this confuses a lot of people. We record on Sunday. Our podcasts are Sunday and Thursday, but we can actually create content anytime when I have time. You know?
Right, right, right.
And I thought it was important. So, like, we were going to go on vacation next week. I figured if I could meet some of these candidates and get them on, get them some content that they could share, that I would do that on Sunday instead of the clip shows. But
Mhm.
I think Raven's really interesting. So,
Fantastic.
Patty Murray, Tiffany Smiley, and Raven Pierre, they're on your list as people to vote for that you should look into, and I just wanted to wrap up on that discussion because there's some really interesting candidates, like
Absolutely.
I'm not quite sure that I US Senate is kind of like a level 5, and I don't see why people are starting there. Like I just think you need I don't know anything about like the activism and side work these people have done, right? Well, I know Isaac is a internet content creator and he thinks that's more important than being a triage nurse and wife and support to a blind guy. Like I don't get why he thinks he's better than Tiffany, but I don't believe he is.
Well, you know,
Right. But
ev-
the rhetoric around this shit is bullshit, Like, I think Adam would support the MAGA guy until he saw Tiffany. And then he'd be like, oh, she actually matches what I stand for. And I think MAGA has diluted what a conservative is. And it's nice to know that they're back around. I love the rational conservative. I'll work with Tiffany all day long.
absolutely. Like, the rational conservative is great. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, do I understand that they're going to have a difference of opinion in certain things? Sure. Does that,
Mhm.
would I be able to vote for them? Maybe not. But I know that, there would at least be some things that we could work together on.
Yeah.
Like, the rational conservative, should be looking at things like, okay, I might not necessarily agree with you on climate change, but I do agree with you that, there is a way that we can get there through energy diversification.
Right.
And
Because it
that
makes
stuff
more
should be
sense.
built, that stuff should be built in-house here in the US.
It should be
So that
built in
way
Washington State, or at least the technology, because you guys are the tech hub, right?
we're one of them, yeah,
Right. And so, like, green technology kind of has to go through you at some point,
you would think.
I would
You know,
hope.
and so realistically, there's no reason why, it's like, okay, I don't agree with you on the climate change part, but
Yeah.
I do agree with you that, let's figure out how we can make these technologies in the country
Right.
and be the ones that sell them to the rest of the country. Let's figure out, what we can do in order to, make this into a viable competitor. You know, it's like
Yeah.
whether that is, if we're going to address, if Inslee wants to address the climate emergency, then what he needs to do is say, we're going to establish these manufacturing plants. And oh, by the way, we're not going to tax these organizations
Right.
in order to do that. Now, some people are going to say, "Oh, well, that puts them on an unfair footing." It's like, well, as a
Mm-hmm.
person who doesn't necessarily agree with a whole lot of taxes to begin with,
Right.
I don't think that's a competition issue. I think that's a, for me, I don't necessarily think that you're going to reach adoption as fast as you want to by taxing the thing that you want adopted.
And as well, you're either going to give them taxes in the forms of subsidies to get them going, or you're going to give them tax breaks like Amazon requests whenever they build a warehouse.
Right. So to me, it's one of those things like the Republican value of, hey, less taxes, and
Yeah.
hey, more American jobs. I think it meets that.
Yeah.
And for the Democrat, it's, hey, we're going to address climate change head on. That
Mm-hmm.
you both get a win. Like that, legitimately, you both get a win.
But what I thought was fascinating about the deregulation was that Republicans voted against deregulating the process to get baby formula going again, and they voted against deregulating the FDA process to make it more streamlined. Like all they wanted to do was open up the process and deregulate. Like Democrats actually voted to deregulate these processes and Republicans voted against it. And that's my problem. Republicans will tell you one thing, they're for deregulation. But what they're for deregulating is the killing of baby bears so that Don Jr. can go fucking hunt a baby bear. You know? Like smart deregulation is important. Like my friend says, we need to use a scalpel, not a hatchet, you know?
Hmm.
And I
No,
think we need to
absolutely.
update the Constitution. Like what we were saying, like that's a contract between people, but it's a contract between people 200 years ago, you know?
And that's one of those things, like, with people becoming career politicians, I absolutely
Yeah.
think that there have to be term limits. And that's something I would
Yes.
say that, people on the left and the right can support. It's just
Yes.
that support waffles when it's my person is 30 years in and they're the head of the X, Y, and Z committee.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Yeah.
great. You know what? Guess what? When that person's retired and, when the Democrats get voted into office, it's not going to be your guy in charge. It's going to be this other person. And
Right.
suddenly it's term limits, term limits, term limits. And it's like, how about just term limits all the way around? Period. End of
Yes.
story.
And that's Raven's suggestion to put a term limit agreement out there and just let whoever wants to sign it because Raven and I feel that most of the younger representatives they don't want a life in politics. They just want to serve as a civic duty. And
And
I
that's,
think
to
that's
me, is the way that
interesting.
it should be.
That's the way it should be. Yeah, and not taking donor money because you're not there to build a career. You know, we
Yep.
don't need a Mitch McConnell. We don't need a Chuck Schumer. We don't need a Chuck
Like,
Grassley, like or a Lindsey Graham. We need a turnover of ideas, but we also need some consistency in upholding the standards that have been there, you know?
right. Like, being a rep, for example, like, you know, what would, it takes a conversation. How long is too long to be the rep of an area?
Right. How
Is
long
it,
is long enough to become an effective one though?
and that's a great question.
Yeah.
How long is long enough to be effective? How long is too long? And
Right.
from there, that's your term limit.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 10 years, maybe it's
Yeah.
14 years. What about Senate? Is it 2 terms? Because
Mhm.
each term is 6 years. Is it three
Right.
terms?
And I'll
I
say, even the MAGA candidate on his website says he'll only serve 2 terms because he doesn't believe in legacy politicians. So that is something that's going around. It isn't something on one side or the other. It's both sides right now.
and to me that's great because
Yeah.
career politicians end up turning into, corporate dick suckers is really
Yeah.
what it is,
Yeah.
because they're going to get their shit paid for through, and unfortunately all of these things. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like it,
I
and
don't like
and
it
it
either.
shouldn't be a thing.
Right. I mean, Ted Cruz just won a case where he could pay himself back. Like money, like I don't understand. I just heard it. It just flew by, but it made me think it was just a little case that just restructured everything.
Well,
Like,
essentially, I think if I remember right, it was he loaned his campaign a bunch of money,
right,
and so now he gets to pay himself back with that. And here's the thing is, like, I don't know, like, without knowing a whole lot about it because I haven't had a chance to dig in, like, I
yeah,
don't
me
know if he
neither.
gets to charge the campaign interest on the
Interest,
money that
right,
he loaned out or what.
right.
Because, he could be like, all right, market rate is 5%, and loan himself out $1 million and come back with a million plus an extra 5%, you know?
Yep. I don't know how it's working, but I don't like this campaign stuff. I wish there was more transparency involved.
Mhm.
Anything to wrap up on?
Nope, I think I'm gonna go outside and, well, do my yard work and
Mm,
enjoy some sunshine.
that's our just the tip. Get outside, enjoy your yard work,
Touch
and
grass.
get your fingernails dirty. Get something in there, you
I
know?
thought you were gonna say get fingered. I'm like, well, I mean, you can also do that too, but
Yeah, Joffrey, here you go.
wait, something tickles.
As it should. The power of love all the way from public access America into your butthole. Thanks for being here, Jeffrey. I love you. I appreciate you. Come back not next week. Next week we're off. Well, come back for the clip shows. I made them a couple weeks ago and I think they're pretty great.
Fantastic.
And our clip shows do really well. And I want to say Habit Breakers is one of our most popular episodes. People really like that aspect of learning how to be a better person individually. So just remember, you're the most important thing in your life. Life will be better when you're better. So get better.
There it is.
Love you. Bye.
Ah.
Uh-oh. Okay. Love it.
Fantastic.
There it is. All right. Thanks, Jeffrey. I appreciate
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So I'm talking with my oldest about potentially coming on.
Okay.